Hey guys, happy Wednesday, I believe it is. Happy Wednesday. And I am sticking to my promise to myself to share some things to think about on a weekly basis, live, unscripted, and kind of in free form, free thought. Getting a lot of positive feedback from these that is encouraging me to kind of keep the train moving. So I will keep on doing this until either I get bored or I stop getting positive response, people thinking that is useful, or I just run out of stuff to share. That could happen. It could happen. So today, at first, I wanted to talk about the strategic significance and critical importance of making change itself the point of your strategy, your business, your methods, your process, your expectations. Then I thought that might be too much for most. So maybe I'd back off of that and talk about how to not fear change. And then I thought I'd back off of that and talk about how to embrace change. And then I thought I'd back off of that and talk about how things always change. And then finally I backed off of that and thought about I'd talk about how our relationship to change in many cases is internal, how we internalize what we perceive and or define that change to mean. And I think the fastest way, right, shortest distance between 2 points, the fastest way for me to try to get my little point across is to tell you a story from my life's experience that I think illustrates this well. And it makes me laugh to think about because it was kind of funny. So Jasmine just turned 17. And this is right before Jasmine was born, I guess. So about 18 years ago, before I had Jasmine's my daughter, before we had Jasmine, I was standing in line at a department store or grocery store. It gets a little foggy there. I think it was actually a grocery store. And it was one of those days where there just weren't enough people working the registers. And you've been there, right? You're like, everybody's there. It was a crappy day. It was rainy. The lines were long. It was the beginning of holiday season. People were in grumpy moods. It's ironic how that always works out, right? The holiday season is when everybody gets all angry and unholiday-like. But anyway, people were standing in these really, really long lines, and the lines were moving really slow, and people had these really big baskets, I guess because there was shopping for holiday season and that type of thing. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, it was a father with a daughter, right? With his little daughter. And I can't remember how old she appeared to be, but I'm going to say something like, I don't know, 7 or 8-ish, something like that. She was in the cart he was pushing, and he had a full cart. And then out of nowhere, she just started to sing. And her voice was absolutely amazing. I mean, she sounded like an angel, right? She was singing, "Hurry up, Daddy, I'm ready to go." But she sang it in such a way, and she just kept repeating that, "Hurry up, Daddy, I'm ready to go," with all the theatrics and everything. And it was ultra cute. And it got everybody's attention, right? Because everybody started to look around. Her voice carried, and it sounded so melodic, right? Everybody was staring to see, wow, who was this little voice coming from? And when they saw it, their heart melted a little, right? Because they saw this little girl singing, performing. And oddly, though, the father was just kind of standing there, like impervious, like no effect. He was just kind of standing there. And I heard some people kind of comment on that. You heard people commenting on how great she sounded and, oh, look how cute that is. Then you heard a couple of snide comments about, yes, the father seems to be really out of it. And then 10 minutes later, she's still, "Hurry up, Daddy, I'm ready to go." Literally 10 minutes later. So now people are like, oh my gosh, she's doing this over and over and over and over. 15 minutes later, it transformed into, "Hurry up, Daddy, I'm ready to go. Hurry up, Daddy, I'm ready to go. Hurry up, Daddy." And now all of those people that once looked at this guy with like, oh my gosh, look at how awesome that is. They was like, oh my gosh, this poor guy. And even me, right? Because I was on the verge of being a new father. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, wow, that's going to be me. That looks so awesome. And now I was like, Really? Really? And then suddenly, and funny because now she's like, hurry up, daddy, I'm ready to go. Hurry up, daddy, I'm ready to go. Hurry up. Literally. And everybody was like, oh my gosh. Now, and then the father, though, through this whole thing, the father just kind of stood there, impervious to it all. He didn't, the beginning didn't faze him, nor did the middle, nor did the ending freaking craziness that she turned into in this little car. Hurry up, daddy, I'm ready to go. Hurry up, daddy, I'm ready to go. But everybody around was like, holy moly, that is crazy. So I think this is a good illustration of a lot of things, right? Because nothing stays the same. And really what changed most, a couple of things changed, right? But, she changed what she was doing. But this is not a pure analogy, all right? But it kind of gets the point across of that everything is constantly changing. Everything around us, there's no such, still is an illusion. Things that appear to be still, even in the physical world, if you talk to like scientists and they tell you, like when you try to touch the table, you're really not touching the table because there's mostly made of empty space and blah, 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 blah. But they will tell you that nothing is stable, nothing is still. Everything is moving and all that moves is changing. And all that moves is changing through time. So even our thoughts and our perspective and our definitions, and that's where I kind of wanted to end up today, because really the core, the most impactful relationship we have as people with change is the meanings we give to change, right? The meanings we give things are what generate the thought, the meanings we give things are what generate how we feel about things, right? Because we react to meaning. What things mean move us. What things mean create a feeling in us. We talk about these feelings called emotions, but they come downstream from meaning, right? The same girl in the basket, when we gave her that meaning of he's a loving dad with a talented daughter, made us feel a certain way. And at 15 minutes later, when we looked at, that's a very patient dad with a maybe crazy daughter. What changed was our meaning changed, which our feelings changed too. But what we need to realize is downstream from our feelings are our actions. Our actions. The intensity of our actions, the focus of our actions, the sustainability of our actions all come downstream from what we feel. But what we feel comes downstream from meaning we have assigned to things. So if the little insight that I will remind myself of, because you're your own person and you can get from this little sharing anything, hopefully something of value, but is to remember that where our action are the result of how we feel. We do something because of how we feel. We don't do something because of how we feel or how we think it will make us feel. The expectation of how we feel is powerful as well. But it's all expectation of how we feel. But all of that comes back to what we think those things mean. That's where the feeling comes from, right? So, knowing that, it might give us just one more little tool we can use when we start to feel in a way we don't want to feel. Or when we start to act in a way we don't want to act. A first step might be to stop and realize, okay, what meaning around my circumstance is making me feel this way? And then when you isolate on that, you can really get into, is this meaning accurate for one? That's a big question mark, right? Because is the meaning you're assigning it actually true? In most cases with humans it's not, right? It's just it's a meaning we're assigning because it's logical. Logic and truth are not the same thing. So, but when we do that, it might give us some insight to create another button on our dashboard, a stop button or a pause button or a change button. Hey, oh, wait a minute. I'm acting as if this means this, when really that's not true. And the minute that's not true button is pushed, the feeling changes. And when the feeling changes, whatever you were not going to do, that drive goes away, or whatever you were doing, that also goes away, because it all comes back to the source of your movement, which is meaning. So hopefully this gave you, I took a roundabout kind of humorous way to get to something that I think is kind of deep in a little bit of way, but it's useful. It's very, very useful. But that was one of the funniest things I ever saw because I personally went through the whole transformation as watching this go down because I started off in this really super happy place, like, oh man, that's so awesome. That's going to be me. But by the end of it, when she was just this little crazy banshee going, hurry up, daddy, let's ready to go. Hurry up, daddy, I'm ready to go. I was like, oh my gosh. Good news is Jazz was never like that. She was never like that. So I lucked out in that regard. All right, guys, that was my food for thought. Hopefully you got something useful out of this. If you did, or you know somebody that, might be in the midst of change and might want to have a different way of looking at it, please share. That's why I do this, and that's what these are designed for. Sharing. I share because I care. Guys, it's hump day. You're halfway there, whatever there is. If Friday is a unique day for you, something different than Monday, then you are halfway there. If Friday's just another way, then still it's hump day. You're halfway through a calendar week. Turn it into something. Give it a special meaning. See how these things come together? Take care, guys.